So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the APrIGF showcase session on a study of the Internet's technical success factors. I'm Joyce Chen, Senior Advisor for Strategic Engagement from Asia Pacific Network Information Center, or APNIC, as you may have heard over the past few days. And I am joined by my colleague Pablo Hinojosa, who is APNIC's Strategic Engagement Director. In this session, we're going to give you a glimpse of a new study on the Internet's technical success factors. This study is jointly commissioned by APNIC and LACNIC. APNIC is the Regional Internet Registry for the Asia Pacific region, and LACNIC is the Regional Internet Registry for the Latin American and Caribbean Internet addresses. Unfortunately, in terms of time zone, it's really too early for our friends from LACNIC to join us for the session, but nevertheless, we will still have a fun one. So APNIC and LACNIC have engaged Analysis Mason to conduct this study. And I'd like for everyone to note that the study is still work in progress. So what you're hearing today is really just some preliminary findings from the study. This session is going to be an opportunity for you to provide your thoughts and feedback on what we've found so far in this study. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Paul Wilson, Director General of APNIC, to tell us more about this project. Paul.
Hi, Joyce. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
It's really great to have this chance to share a recent internet governance activity with the community here, which I hope is of interest. I'd just like to start by thanking APrIGF, the MSG, the steering group that is, and the Secretariat for accommodating this session. It's a showcase about a project by APNIC and LACNIC, introduced by Joyce, which started earlier this year. The project is a study that we've commissioned into what we've referred to as the Internet's technical success factors. So I think in this session, we're going to hear a status report and have a chance for discussion about how the project is going so far. But I wanted to give a little bit of background about the study from APNIC's perspective as one of the instigators. I hope the background is shared also, and the intent is shared by LACNIC as our partner in this. And unfortunately, as Joyce said, LACNIC couldn't be here, but I think I speak for both of us. We've been talking a while, APNIC and LACNIC, about questions that have been raised from time to time through the whole the recent history of internet governance. That's for about the last 20 years, about whether the internet itself needs to be changed or upgraded in some way. So that's not just one question. It hasn't come up just once, but it's come up a few times over the years from a range of different stakeholders, which happen to be mainly governments and intergovernmental organisations, but sometimes others. And it's a question about whether the internet, which was designed some decades ago and has been with us for some decades now, is really still fit for purpose, or whether it needs to change in some way to be able to scale, to be able to adapt to new applications and needs, to be able to satisfy future demands, et cetera, or whether some fundamental change of its standards or its protocols is needed and justified. So there have been a few examples. Recently, there's the new IP proposal that has come up from the ITU, and it's gone by a couple of different names. But before that, there was NGN, and there've been quite a few others. And I think it's worth noting that while these questions have come up for about probably the best part of a couple of decades, through that entire time, the internet's continued to grow really massively. It's continued to function and to succeed. So we might say so far, so good, and was there really any need for the question in the first place? I mean, that is the question, but still the same question could be asked, and it probably will be asked about the internet to come in future. So together, APNIC and LACNIC agreed to do some work on this to investigate what are the reasons or the technical factors, as we put it, behind the internet's success. And we decided to commission a study to objectively look at that question and to identify success measures of the internet in the real world as it exists today in terms of its operational realities. We wanted to kind of refresh the narrative and to provide some new objective input into discussions. We wanted to definitely disentangle the geopolitics which exist within internet governance around this question to some extent, and focus on the technical analysis and an objective analysis exclusively. We also wanted to be sure to look at the internet as it actually functions today, not in a sort of not in its original form or in an idealized or conceptual form, but the internet as it is today and how it actually functions and how it continues to be successful. So it's all about the real success factors, the objective and real technical factors that exist across the internet, across a whole range of internet technologies. So we called for proposals from people who could help us with this study, and we received quite a few. And after a difficult evaluation process, we agreed to proceed with Analysis Mason, who are here to speak with us about this. So I think that the team will introduce themselves, and I think I hope we'll hear a progress report about how the study's going towards, the study's not finished yet, but it'll be a progress report towards the final report of the project, which is expected around the time of the next IGF in December. And hopefully what we'd like to do in this session is warm up the community to what's coming next and seek some inputs here as well, some discussion inputs here. So I think I'll hand back to Joyce to help to facilitate that discussion from this point. I hope everyone does find the session valuable, and in that case, we would love to hear from you and also to help to share the project when it's released. Thanks. Back to you,
Thank
Joyce.
you very much, Paul. So before we begin, let's turn to menti.com. And if you can see on the screen, just go to the website menti.com and then key in the code 76422221. So if you have any issues with accessing the website, please let me know. And the question we're asking is, using 3 words, how would you describe what has made the internet successful? So you are free to use only 3 words, or if you have more, please feel free to put those in as well. So some results are already coming in. Borderless, innovation friendly. I see IETF, which goes hand in hand with standards. Distributed is a very important word. Interconnected, end-to-end, free and open. I see open is, several people have probably put that in. That's fantastic. Jolie says cats. Of course. What would we do without cats? So as we think about how we describe the internet as successful, I would like to open the floor. I would now pass the time to my colleagues from Analysis Mason. And I apologize again if I mispronounce your name. We have with us Michael Kendi, Senior Advisor in Analysis Mason, Eamon Kavalbine, who is the partner, and we have Julia Alford, who is their Associate Consultant. It's early in the morning for our European colleagues, and I thank you so much for joining us, and I pass the time now to you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for participating in this. A lot of the words that we saw there are already words that have come up in our study, but would like to present a little bit about where we are so far in this study, as Paul said. And first of all, I'd like to thank, on behalf of Analysis, APNIC and LACNIC for presenting us with this project, which has been fascinating to work on. And we're looking forward to your comments today and reactions as it starts to come out for the IGF in December. And also thank the organizers of this IGF for this opportunity. So the way we started thinking about this is that the internet started 50 plus years ago as a research network in the US for academics and researchers who were using basically the internet to access mainframe computers, and then they started using workstations, mainly to share text files and then eventually email over very, very slow connections. And then the internet turned into what it is today as a result of many of the words that were given in that word cloud that we just saw. And what we tried to do is isolate four technical factors that help to turn the internet into the success that it is today. And that will then be able to help us analyze whether it's fit for purpose going forward into the future. And those four aspects that we isolated, and would like some input on these later, were that it's been scalable for the incredible growth in use and the reach of the internet from its early start. It's been flexible to accept all types of new networks. It's been adaptable to new applications that the founders could only have dreamed about, and that have certainly helped us get through this pandemic, including the one that we're using for this hybrid meeting today. And it's been resilient to shocks and changes over the years, that it's kept going in spite of external shocks and internal changes. And so with that introduction, I'd like to turn over to my colleague, Julia, who's going to take us through examples of each of these four aspects of success. Julia?
Thank you, Michael. Okay. So the first figure that we're going to look at is one that demonstrates the internet's scalability. So it shows the rapid growth of the internet's user base from an estimated 2.6 million in 1990 to 3.9 billion, more than half of the global population a mere 30 years later. And it's still not over, obviously. The internet's still growing, and as remaining barriers to adoption are addressed, penetration will increase and the internet will continue to grow, becoming more and more representative of the geographic distribution of the global population, as shown on the right. Despite this rapid, continual global growth, the underlying protocols did not break down, they did not stop working, they scaled. The next figure demonstrates the flexibility of the internet. So it shows how the preferred access technologies have changed over time. So going from dial-up, using analog modems, through digital ISDN, and later DSL broadband, to the development of 3G. There have been many different technologies used to access the internet. Today, mobile networks are the main choice for most users, with fiber becoming the dominant fixed line technology in many markets. The internet has had to be incredibly flexible to support such a range of access technologies. As mentioned by Michael, the internet has been incredibly adaptable. It supports a diverse, evolving collection of applications, ranging from gaming to file storage to social media, as shown in the figure. At nearly 60% of global traffic, video streaming has developed into a major use case of today's internet. And yet, it's a use case that really could not have been imagined possible in the early days of the internet. It's kind of a really good example of just how much the internet has had to adapt to. And finally, we have an example of resilience. So throughout history, the internet has had to be resilient to DDoS attacks, worms, botnet armies, and natural disasters. It has stood firm. The impact of COVID-19 serves as a good example of just one facet of the internet's resilience. That is, its ability to withstand large shocks. With more than half of the global population on lockdown by April 2020, internet use skyrocketed. The figure shows just how much the average international traffic increased by nearly 50% in 2020, reaching nearly 150 terabits per second, an absolutely massive jump in growth rate from previous years. Remote working, social video calls, and more time spent online all contributed to the sharp rise in traffic, and yet the internet was resilient. I'm now going to hand over to Armand to explain a bit more about the technical principles that underlied each of these examples.
Thank you, Julia. So we've seen now these 4 different aspects or different facets of the success of the internet: the scalability, the flexibility, the adaptability, and the resilience. And in trying to explain how did internet achieve these important success factors, there are of course many that you could look at, and you've suggested several in the word cloud that we just saw. I very much enjoyed that. They kind of, as Michael said, they reflect also our own discussion throughout this project. We've chosen to highlight 3 technical principles that have played a very central role as enablers for the success of the internet. And I think many of these will be known to you in advance, but in this report we try to explain how these technical principles have contributed to these 4 success factors. The first one that we have highlighted is layering. So the internet and the internet protocol stack is layered, and that has some wonderful implications in separating the applications that run in the end systems from the underlying networks. And this enables those 2 components of the internet to develop not completely independently, but mostly independent from each other. That is one important principle that we believe has been central to explain the success of the internet. The second principle that we want to highlight is known as the network of networks. By the network of networks, we mean the fact that the different networks that together compose the internet, they are operated mostly independently as what is known as autonomous systems, meaning that a lot of the decisions about technology, about operating models, is taken independently by many different networks. This contributes a lot to the flexibility of the internet, and we argue has been important for its success. The third and final principle that we have highlighted in our report, or will highlight in the coming report, is what is known as the end-to-end principle. Now, the gist of the end-to-end principle is to keep the network simple and do complex operations at the end systems. This fact that the network has been kept simple relatively to the end systems has been important both for innovation and for being able to scale the network. So these are the 3 technical principles that we have chosen to highlight in explaining those 4 aspects of success that we looked at. Now, of course, the internet keeps evolving. The internet is not static. Over the last 20 years, as Paul alluded to, there has been significant growth, but there has also been significant changes in the types of applications, in the types of networks that are used in the internet. And as Paul also alluded to, there have been several proposals and suggestions that there is a need of a replacement or a radical remake of the internet. What we argue through this work is that the internet will certainly have to keep evolving to keep up with new demands and new requirements. But we believe that these principles here have played an important role, and that they probably will continue to play an important role for the success of the internet. That does not mean that these principles are carved in stone or that they are God-given. In fact, in our report, we highlight several examples of where these principles have been bent or even perhaps broken. And that is perhaps in itself a part of the internet success, this ability to bend or break principles. But we still believe that these underlying technical principles have served the internet well, and perhaps also will continue to serve the internet well. So with that, I give the word back to Joyce.
Thank you very much, Emmond, Julia, and Michael. We had a question on the chat which has been answered regarding whether the international traffic numbers include CDNs or content delivery networks. And Michael has already answered, it would not include domestic traffic from a CDN cache to users, but should include international traffic in the core to fill those caches. Before we open the floor for any questions, let's turn to menti.com again. And if you key in the code 76422221, and again, if you encounter any issues with loading this, please let us know. The question we ask is, how would you rank the success measures that you've just heard? So I invite you to go to menti.com and use the code 76422221. So I think this must not be a very easy question to answer, especially if you're asked to rank. So take your time to answer this question. It looks like the answers are very, very close to one another, but it seems scalability is quite stable at the top. Winston says, it's a very hard question. How about all of them? Yes. So there isn't a right or wrong answer. It's just to get a sense of how you feel about the 4 attributes that we have just shared with you. And so I think we've stabilized in terms of the responses, 22 responses. First, we see scalability, adaptability, resilience, and then flexibility. So I'll now open the floor for the next 10 to 15 minutes, perhaps, for any questions and feedback. Do you agree or disagree with the findings you have heard? What are your thoughts about the problem statement in general, about how you would describe the success factors, the technical success factors of the internet? You can raise your hand and I'll let you take the mic, or you can also type into the chat box. So as you are thinking about your questions, already I saw previously Sridip had said that the internet is the internet because of the people and the innovative aspect. And Anju agrees, and she says without people in our diverse communities, the internet and the web could not be successful. So it's great to include the human factor as part of the study. We all know that technology is nothing without people and the processes. So I see further people speaking in the chat. Swaran or Jean, would you like to take the mic and share what you have put in the chat? If you could raise your hand to let me know if you would like to take the mic. Swaran, please go ahead.
Hi, Joyce. Thank you. I do agree with the other factors as well, but I believe what we are going through at the moment internationally, scalability has been a major issue with all the ISPs everywhere. You even look at places, developed countries, large democracies, places where there's lots of ISPs, services drastically dropped. For me, in academia, it's something I face every day, and it has just added to the disparities. So I think scalability is one of the major issues at the moment, but of course, the other ones have also have their roles to play. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Soran, for sharing your thoughts. And I see, of course, we have good friends in the audience today. I'll turn the mic over to Olaf. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me. A good friend of, a good mutual friend of ours often says, some of us in this room, often says, in order to produce something that sounds well, you shouldn't sing in unison, you have to sing in harmony. Harmony singing usually sounds much, much, much better. And that was a thought that came up when listening to the presentation and seeing the properties and the principles pass by. They resonate very much with me. At the Internet Society, over the last 2 years, we have been working on a model that we call the Internet way of networking. And in the first part of that work that we launched last year, we identified 5 critical properties. Accessible infrastructure with a common protocol, an open architecture of interoperable and reusable building blocks, decentralized management in a distributed routing system, common global identifiers, and a technology-neutral general purpose network. Those are the 5. And I think that if you look at the way that the principles, the 3 principles are described, you can map them at least 4 of these critical properties. The layering goes into the open architecture of interoperable and reusable building blocks. The end-to-end principle is perhaps a little bit less easy to map, but I would put it in a technology neutral and general purpose network combined with the reusable building blocks and the common protocol. And then the network of networks is clearly decentralized management and distributed routing system. So it's a slightly different look, but I also think that the purpose of the tool that we've been developing is slightly different than the purpose of the tool that has been presented here, or the report that has been presented here. What I do miss as a success factor or a principle is the common global identifiers. So that is perhaps a question that I have. How could the internet be a success if we didn't have a set of common global identifiers such as the DNS? That is a question that I have. Further, some of the properties like scalability, flexibility, adaptability, and resiliency are elements that I recognize as what we call enablers in the second part of the work that we're now proceeding, and that has not yet been launched. But the idea there is that the critical properties, or those principles that you just talked about with just in a different tune, so to speak, give you the internet. But in order to make it global, open, secure, and trustworthy, you need other things to happen. And that's what we call the enablers. And for security and trustworthiness, we recognize scalability, adaptability, and resiliency as being part of those buckets, so to speak. So just to say what I just said, very shortly, this resonates very much with the way that we are looking as the Internet Society at this work. That's obviously not a surprise, and I think it's a very useful perspective and a very useful way to talk about the internet.
Thank you very much, Olaf. Ammon, Michael, or Julia, would you like to try answering Olaf's question before I go to the other raised hands?
Well, I would just say thank you. I don't know, Ahmed, if you want to go as well. You know, as Paul said, it's preliminary. We're certainly aware of the IWN work, and we're looking forward to what's coming out on the enablers. And I like the way that you link the two, and we certainly recognize the common global identifiers, and you know, I mean, the report is of course much longer than what we presented, and we discuss it, but we'll talk internally about that point as well, and maybe a way to bring that out. The same with the point about the people making the internet. We clearly recognize that as well, and we discuss it in the longer report. And clearly, that's a key issue in the success of the internet. And we were lucky enough to be able to speak to some of the founders and in the process of this project, and have some nice quotes from them. We spoke with Olaf and Andre at ISOC, and so we clearly recognize the role that everyone, including everyone on this call, plays in the success of the internet. I don't know, Ahmed, do you want to?
No, I think I just agree with you, and I'll just say to Olaf's point about the common global identifiers that we certainly agree with that. It might be that they should have been given an even more prominent place also in this presentation, but we do spend quite a bit of the discussion in the report on discussing the role of IP as the common address space, and also on the DNS and as a naming system. So thank you for that input. That is certainly appreciated.
Thanks, Michael and Ammon. We had a question from Jean in the chat. There were two parts to it. Is the study going to consider technical challenges / recommendations? And the second question on public consultation at some stage. And I think that has been answered by Pablo in the chat. But if you could just speak on whether the study will consider technical changes or recommendations.
So in the report as it is planned today, it will not recommend specific technical changes. This is more a study about the current internet, the success factors, also some challenges that are being posed to the internet looking forward, but not to the level of specific technical suggestions in this case.
Thanks, Ammon. I saw a hand from Amrita, and I'm not sure, have we lost you, Amrita? Are you still
Hi,
there?
Joyce. I'm here.
Hello, hi.
You can hear me.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Hi. So I actually, congratulate APrIGF and ACNIC for coming up with this kind of a study. It was much needed, especially because of the lots of discourses going on, changing certain things like IPs, etc. But this kind of an issue coming up is good because it actually helps to reiterate what went well, what is still working, and what can still work. I am not a technical person, but I will speak from the public policy perspective. So this is good when, decision makers sit to discuss things. These kind of reports help. And I think this is a first start, and all the 4 parameters seems very relevant. So yeah, I am looking forward to this report, and hopefully it will also help us in our respective nations to share these reports and reiterate, the many things are still working well in the internet and the networks. Of course, there could be more studies done on what can be improved, but I think those are second step. But this kind of a study at the first level with data it was very much needed. So I look forward to this report. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you so much, Amrita, for your kind words. And I also do look forward to the final study as well at the end of this year. I see that Winston had a comment: the greatest success factor of the internet is its desirability. Winston, would you like to take the mic and just elaborate a bit about what you mean?
Yeah, hi Joyce. Hi
Winston.
everyone. I wasn't actually planning to speak to that idea. It seems to me that the internet is so mainstream, it's something we cannot live without. It's like fresh running water. But we have to keep it clean. We have to corral it. We have to channel it. The wrong word. Channel is the right word. We have to distribute it fairly and equitably, but it is essential to the functioning of modern society for service, for health and education. Any discussion about the technical issues is, well, obviously it's essential technical issues, but this is a political question. Modern society can't function without it now. That's all I wanted to say, really. Does that make sense?
Thanks very much, Winston. Yes, what you said makes sense. And it does give a bit of color to what you've mentioned in the chat. I don't know if any of our colleagues would like to just comment on what Winston have said.
Well, what I said was a political statement. I guess we're allowed to make political statements, are we, in this forum?
No, we don't have to shy away from it, even though the political statements are not really the essence of the study, which is more of a technical one.
Right. We were trying more to answer the question, what made it into this internet that is so desirable and necessary and critical? And we use the COVID example as, really an example of all four principles in action that helped, enable the networks to keep functioning together, new networks to arise, new bandwidth to come up to address all of the increased demand, new applications that help us function like this one. So yeah, we were trying to give voice to the technical factors that made it into that. And as Paul said, we're trying to keep it at objective level and not into the political realm.
Yeah.
I see a comment from MH Masum. It's quite a long one, and I wonder if you would not like to voice it out and let us know your thoughts. If not, I'm happy to read it out as well. If you would like to raise your hand. If not, that is okay as well, so I can read it. So MH Masum says, the success of the internet can be measured by the growth in access, usage, and applications within and across regions around the world. The adoption and usage have been fueled by innovation and investment in new networks, which have enabled a change in the content and services with higher bandwidth and lower latency. This evolution demonstrates the success of the internet in key areas: scalability and reach, flexibility across networks, convergence of services, adaptability to new applications, and resilience. Thanks very much. And I think there definitely is alignment with the findings that we have so far and that we've shared. Perhaps we haven't really talked that much about convergence. I wonder, Eamon, Michael, would you like to share your thoughts a bit about some of the design principles that you found in the study? I know we didn't cover it in the presentation, but I think it's interesting just to share a little bit what you thought about the design principles as well.
Yes, perhaps if I go first, Michael, and then you can chime in. It was very interesting to see when Joyce asked the initial question about describing the success of the internet with one word, what words came up, because in the interest of time and brevity, we did not cover everything in this report in our very short introduction, but we have in our draft report also spent quite a bit of time on saying what are some foundational principles that lay below these technical principles, and what we've focused on there is exactly its openness, its simplicity, and its decentralization. So those underlying values or guiding principles, and those were in at least simplicity and openness I saw came up as some of the most popular words in that word cloud. So definitely we argue that under these technical principles there are a set of guiding principles that are not technical per se. They are more perhaps philosophical, but that have been very central to the development and the success of the internet.
And just if I could jump in back to the point that was raised at the beginning, when we talk about those three principles, in particular decentralization, the idea that nobody owns, creates, runs the internet, that it's run by the community. We do talk quite a bit about organizational and the multi-stakeholder governance, the role of the standards bodies, the role of users, governments, and others, all playing a role in developing and keeping the internet running. So we do bring it in there.
Thanks very much. I'm not sure if Edmund, the other a different spelling, is in the room, and if you would like to just share your thoughts with us. What do you think about the findings that we've shared today? No, I don't think so. Perhaps Edmund is not able to. That
Are
it's
you
okay.
talking about me?
Yes, this Edmund. Yes, hello.
Oh.
So
I wasn't sure whether.
Go ahead.
Well, I think I don't have too much to add, but since you called on me, I guess I think the technical success factors are as Olaf mentioned, as the presentation was going through. I felt I guess I echo very much with the findings. I am also, as I think Winston mentioned, there is a since we're in internet governance, there's a governance aspect and government aspect to this that I hope the report, or it's, I mean, this is something that's great, but it has to be shared by also the governments around the world to not well, we might think it's not breakable, but sometimes people like to break things. So that's what I want to add on.
Thanks so much, Edmund, and apologies for putting you on the spot, but you were very game for it. I don't know if Edmund, Michael, the other Edmund and Michael, you have anything to say about that, and sharing it with the governments and making it easy for them to read as well. If not, that is fine. Michael?
No, I thought that was a good point. I just see another hand raised, and I'm very much enjoying the comments coming in on the chat as well.
Yep. So I see MH Masum. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chan. Actually, I just share something which I was earlier mentioned in the chat box. We all know the Internet Protocol version 4 and version 6. In the whole world, version 4 is the most familiar and most regular application platform which we are already used in. But on the contrary part, Internet Protocol version 6 is not yet developed in the whole world, especially in local or rural areas or non-developed countries. So there is a really big questions how we can implement Internet Protocol version 6 to the whole world, not only in the developed country, not only in developing country. We have to ensure local and regional which countries are not yet developed much yet. So I hope if we ensure Internet Protocol version 6 and dynamically, though is highly cost-effective issues whenever we develop this protocol version, physical layer as well as application layer. So I think if our technical concerned person take actions regarding this matter, then we will ensure that the challenges of continuous success of internet, whether based on technical limitations or commercials or marketing economic factors. So we'll frame this, explain to success stories and discuss where emerging protocols and standard addressing the challenge where there are all those gaps. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I do agree. I think there's a lot more work to be done, particularly for IPv6 deployment. We see that the rates are still not very much global, still about 30 to 40% around the world. And so at least in APrIGF, we are doing a lot of work and capacity building around deployment of IPv6 in particular. I do have time only for one question, and then we will carry on to the rest of the program. And that's from Visharat, who asks, does openness as a concept conflict with privacy and security? We probably don't have time to answer this on the mic, but if anybody has any views around the answer to Visharat, please put that into the chat. And now I will turn us back to menti.com. And thank you very much, Eamon, Michael, for helping us on this, answering this Q&A portion. But now we go to menti.com. And again, the code is 76422221. We have just 2 more questions to ask of you. So after hearing the presentation, and this is again similar to the first question that we had today, how would you describe what has made the internet successful? You can use 3 words to describe it. You can use more words to describe it. Have you changed your mind after what you've heard in this session? So again, menti.com, use the code 76422221. I'm glad to see that some of the words that you saw in the presentation today have now gone into your answers. That shows that there is some resonance with what you've heard today. I see also, for example, global identifier, which was one of the things that we had talked about, globalization, connectivity. I see that the discussion around the human factor, that it's not just the technical factor that's important. Layering. Just going to give a few more seconds for people to answer this question before we move on to the next one. So let's go to the next question. This is our last question, and it's a free text, so you can feel free to type in whatever you want. And that is, how do you see the future of the internet? What will it look like? I absolutely agree. I think IPv6 is the future of the internet. It is the current internet. It is also the future of the internet. Open, safe, and live partner? That is an interesting way of thinking about it. I see we've gone back to the cats. That's fantastic, which we should not forget our roots. Worrisome but hopeful. That's nice. Some of you have a bit of a bleak outlook. You think it will become centralized and consolidated, unfortunately. That is something I hope that we can do more to try and not make that happen. So again, under great threat, but with strong advocates that will fight for it. And maybe general users will lose their privacy from a government perspective or economic growth demands. So I'm seeing that quite a number of you are concerned about the future of the internet. I don't know if it's possible to scroll down. Okay. Cyber Earth, that is interesting. I wonder what that means. Maybe it's something to do with sustainability. Open and encrypted, that would be fantastic if we had more of that. Secure and available to all, greater connectivity in rural areas towards a globalized and connected world. So I think there is some consensus that, the future may look a little bit bleak in terms of where the trends are taking us, especially where it comes to centralization and stakeholders fighting for greater control of the internet. But I see as well that, our participants today feel that there is also hope. For example, someone says that the technical factors will overcome threats to openness and security. And I think that is such an excellent way for us to end this session. It's not all bleak. There is still hope. There are many of us who are working towards an open, free, stable, secure, resilient internet. And so I thank you for joining us today and for your wonderful participation. We hope that you find the study meaningful so far that you've heard. Do look forward to the study when it's published at the end of this year, and we will be showcasing it during the UN IGF in December. We have a session on that. So if you could also join us, that would be fantastic. And thank you again for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this session. I did very much. Thank you for your participation, and thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.